right? We're not waiting for anyone else? All right, so my name is Lindsay. I'm the Director of Sustainability at the Greenberg Nature Center. And today, because we have some rainy weather for gardening, we're gonna be talking about animals and a little bit about animal and human connection and interactions. So I brought 4 animals with me today. So I think to start off, we're gonna start off with a cute one.
Chinchilla.
All right, so this here is Pony Boy, and Pony Boy is a chinchilla. And Pony Boy and all chinchillas are not found around here, so these are not native to the United States. They're native to the Andes mountain region in South America. So you wouldn't find this guy here. Now these guys are very important when we talk about human-animal interaction because they are endangered where they live and for reasons related to humans. So I'll give you a little bit of some facts about him as an animal first. So this is a nocturnal animal, so you'll see that that's why he has some really big ears, big eyes, these really big whiskers. All of these things help him to see better at night. The other things that he has is this really long tail, and this tail is important because this helps him with his balance. It's why he's able to kind of sit on my hand. Chinchillas are very, very fast, and they're amazing jumpers. So this guy can jump about 7 feet into the air without running, so over all of our heads. And he needs that tail to be able to do that well. So as a nocturnal animal, he's also dark in color. So when he goes out, he's hard to spot. And the coloring is also good for him because in the mountains where he lives, he's surrounded by dark rock. And that allows him to camouflage really, really well. They do like to live with friends. So at the Nature Center, he has 2 sisters that live there with him. And they have a couple of ways that they're able to protect themselves. So besides being very, very fast and very, very good at jumping, they can do something very cool. It's called a fur slip. So it's very similar and can be compared to when a reptile or a lizard drops their tail when something grabs it. So if a predator was to try and eat Pony Boy and grabbed onto him here, he could shed all of the fur on his body at once. He would have no fur, or he could try to just shed the parts that have been grabbed. And that would allow him to get away, and the animal would have a mouthful of fur, and Pony Boy would be safe. That's a pretty cool thing that Pony Boy can do. So Pony Boy here, a couple other things. They are herbivores, so he's not a meat-eating animal. He's mostly a vegetarian. Nuts, seeds, berries, all of those kind of things are his favorite. So today, I brought him a snack, and I'll see if he'll eat for us. Because it's actually very adorable. So you'll see this should remind you of a squirrel, right? So they are cousins to the squirrel. They have that similar tail, right? And so he's opening up the peanut. He's going to take the shell off, and then he's just going to eat the nuts on the inside. And then he'll throw what he doesn't want on the ground. Now these are rodents, right? So they have those 2 front teeth similar to a rat, a bunny, guinea pig, those kind of teeth that allow him to migrate through that.
He's so cute. Looks like he's eating the shell.
Sometimes he might eat on the shells. So a lot of people, the reason we have Pony Boy is because people keep them as pets. And so they have domesticated them and they're decent pets, but we never suggest that people get chinchillas as pets. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one, as I said, they like to live in communities, right? So if you're just gonna have one, it wouldn't be fair to the chinchilla. The other reason is that they require very specific conditions. This is an animal that's used to living in very cold temperatures, negative temperatures most of the year. So they're covered in this fur. This fur makes them one of the softest animals in the world. So they have 80 hairs per follicle. We have 1 hair per follicle. So just think of how much hair he has, right? Fur. And that allows him to stay very warm, but in a climate like this, he actually has no way of sweating. So if he overheats, he doesn't have a way to cool his body off because he's used to being in cold temperatures. So that's one main reason. If you don't have a home for them that is warm or cool enough to make sure that they don't overheat, it's not a great idea. The second thing is they actually cannot get wet. If a chinchilla gets wet, they'll stay wet for about 4 to 5 days. Now in our home, that's okay. They're not gonna die or get very, very sick, but they can get kind of like a mold or things growing on their fur. But in the wild, if he was to get wet, he would freeze because it's so cold where he lives. So these guys cannot get wet, which is another reason they're not the greatest pets, because a lot of the time you just have to be very, very careful with them. and they require a lot of exercise. And they're nocturnal, so they usually want to be awake when we're asleep. The only reason he's awake right now is, of course, because I woke him up.
I get done what I gotta get done.
So,
Have a good one.
I brought him his bath, so we'll see if he'll take a bath. So, what I was saying is that they cannot get wet, but what they can do is they take a bath in dust. And this helps them to actually stay very, very dry. Another thing that does for them is it helps to block out scent. So if they're worried about a predator, they'll try to cover their fur in a different smell, right? So this dust can help with that too.
So like dirt or sand?
Dirt, yeah, so if he was in the wild, it would be like a dirt or sand that he would just kind of rub in. We're gonna take a bath first. So it's a very quick little rub and he'll just kind of roll around. And because we didn't touch him too much, he probably doesn't feel that he's too dirty. And that's about that. And then if you kind of look at his fur now, it's kind of shiny. And that's how he does it. So if you want, you can do 2 fingers. You can touch right on his back there. It's very soft, right?
It's almost a video.
Yeah.
Why you doing that shit?
Thank you. So one of the main reasons I brought him is to talk about animal conservation. So when we're talking about sustainability and humans' role in the environment, these guys have a hard time where they live for multiple reasons. Number one is humans like to wear animals as fur for fashion, right? So these are actually very popular as fur coats, or at least used to be, which led to one of the bigger declines in their population. But the other big issue is mining and deforestation. So as humans, we remove land for all different sorts of reasons. We'll cut down trees for wood, we'll cut down trees for agriculture, right? So all of these things interrupt their lifestyle and how they're used to living. So it changes everything from a predator that might want to eat them or a food source that they need that's now been removed, right? So all of these things are important to think about when we think about animals and how we interact with them and with the natural world. Any questions about Pony Boy?
So like when you said he's a herbivore, does that mean he doesn't like eat like insects or any of that?
Yeah, so no bugs for him either. Mostly just nut seeds, berries. So think what a bunny would eat. Very similar. Anything else? If you think of more, we can come in.
Does he have like claws or is it?
So he does have nails, and he's a decent climber, but he's more of a talented jumper. But if I was to let him go, he could jump similarly to a squirrel. Yeah, so he does have little tiny nails, but they're not sharp like a squirrel's would be. All right, you ready? All right. So our next animal is our reptile. So this here is a bearded dragon, and his name is Fireball. And so a bearded dragon, also not something that you would find around here. This is a desert animal that usually lives in Australia. And this type of lizard, again, is domesticated and is a very popular house pet, which is usually why we end up with our animals, because people will get them, realize they can't care for them, and then have to give them away. So bearded dragons, first thing is where they get their name from. So they get their name from a defense mechanism that they have in the wild. And basically what happens is in the animal kingdom, if the larger you are and the darker in color you are, the scarier you are, right? So for him, when he gets scared or feels like he needs to defend himself, he's gonna fill his chin up here with air. It's gonna blow up to about the size of his head, and then it's gonna actually turn black. So a bearded dragon, it looks like they're growing a beard. So that's where they get their name from a way they protect themselves. Now these guys have a lot of ways they protect themselves. So that's one. The second, of course, is all of the spikes that you can see along the body. And you see when I'm touching them, they're actually not that sharp, but they look scary. So most animals will come across him and say, I don't want to take a bite out of that, right? So they're gonna leave him alone. And at some points, if you were to grab him and he was scared, he would puff up his body. And then when you did grab onto those spikes, they would hurt you a little bit and you would let him go. So those spikes are a really great way that he can protect himself. The next thing is he's an awesome climber, so you can see that he can basically climb right up my shirt and he can hold on, and he has very long nails, and this allows him to do that. A great way to get away from predators in the wild. And the last thing he can do, and I'm gonna actually do it to him while he's like this, is where these are from, they're actually called pancake lizards. And the reason for that is that they can flatten out their body to about the thickness of a pancake. So you can kind of see that's his tummy right there. And that allows him to squeeze underneath rocks, logs, anything that they can find to hide from a predator that might be trying to get them. So again, they have a lot of great ways to protect themselves. Now there's a couple ways that a lot of people associate with lizards and reptiles in protecting themselves that he does not do. The first one is dropping of the tail. So a lot of lizards, people realize that if they're being attacked by an animal and they're running away and that animal bites the tail, a lot of lizards can release the tail from their body and then they can get away. He cannot do that. So if his tail was bitten from his body, it would be like if we lost a limb. So he would be able to scar over, but he would not grow himself a new tail. So this is the only tail that he's got. The other thing is camouflage. So a lot of people think about chameleons. And so whenever they see a lizard, they think, oh, he can turn purple or blue. So he's not gonna be doing that, unfortunately, but he can change color for other reasons. So in the desert, this color is great for him because he can blend in with the sand, but he can change color to help regulate his body temperature. So if he is too cold, he's going to turn a darker color,
To like absorb light.
attract heat. And if he's too hot, he'll turn a lighter shade and he'll reflect the heat. The other thing he'll do is he'll flatten out when he is too cold, because he'll get bigger. The more surface area you have, the more heat you can take in. So that's another way that he'll protect himself. So he cannot change colors like blue, purple, red, but he can change color in shade, and he cannot drop this tail like other lizards can. So him, in terms of diet, he's more of an herbivore. So this guy, herbivore and insectivore. So you're asking if the chinchilla would eat any insects, and he would actually be the one that would eat insects. So insectivore means that about 80% of his diet is going to be bugs and insects. The rest, he'll eat lettuces and salads. We actually give them salad about 3 times a week. He gets a little tray of salad. So most vegetables, but their favorite is insects. So that again is another reason we end up with a lot of these guys. People get sick of having to give them the live insects. It's difficult. So I brought some bugs with me.
Is it expensive, to buy all those insects?
Yeah, it can be. The most the most common food for him would be crickets, and crickets aren't too expensive. It's more so that you have to go every week to buy the crickets. So it's like you have to constantly keep up with the care. So I'm gonna put him on the floor to eat his meal. Now, he probably won't do this today. I've never seen it happen in real life. But if you look it up online, they can actually run very fast, 5 to 10 miles an hour, which is pretty fast for a lizard. And the way that they would do it is that if they were trying to get away from something, they could stand up on their 2 hind legs, and they could run like we can. They can run on just their 2 legs. So I brought some bugs with me. These are cockroaches, and he loves them. So we'll see if he'll eat them for us. So what will happen is it will be quick, so I brought 5 with me just so we don't miss it. But he does have a tongue, and it's gonna act like a frog's tongue. Grab it, and then he's gonna mush it. All right, are we ready?
Oh, shit.
And I will say that all of our bearded dragons are a little lazy. So you'll see that it's very quick. Before he came here, he had about 15 crickets already. And so he's still, even though he's a little guy, he's not full grown, this is a baby, he can eat a lot.
And he doesn't have any teeth or...
So he has little tiny ones, but nothing compared to what we have. So if he was to bite onto, you would feel it, but it wouldn't be super damaging. Wow. Got 2 more. So you'll see once it gets a little far away, he decides he's a little too tired to get All right. We got one more big one.
His tongue also looks kind of like yellowish or
Yeah, when it comes out, right? Now the other thing is that the coloring, especially with the tongue, can also be a way to scare away predators too. Right now, I think it's that color just because of what he's been eating. When you smush one of these guys, it's like a yellow kind of inside. But we have other types of reptiles. We have something like a blue-tongued skink. And their tongue is blue, and that's a way that they are actually protecting themselves. So when something is coming towards them that they don't like, they stick out their tongue, and the blue coloring will scare away most animals.
So it kind of like doesn't look natural.
Yeah, so anytime, like, when you think about it, like, think of any animal that you feel is dangerous. They usually have something to indicate that to you, right? So a bee has the stripes. So any bright colors, striping, all of that is usually an animal trying to say to you, hey, I might be poisonous or dangerous or sting you, something like that.
Like a black widow.
Yes, exactly. So on the side of the face here, he's got these two little holes. So those are his ears. He has decent hearing, not amazing. But the cool thing about his ears is that he can actually open and close them. There's an inner flap that he has, and the reason for that is because of where he lives. So in the desert, he doesn't want sand to get into his ears. Same thing with his eyes, so he'll have a double lid, and then he'll have something on the inside there that he can use to protect himself. So if you'd like to touch him.
Is he like more like nocturnal or like just like daytime?
So he's, I'm pretty sure he's just like us, yeah. So he's gonna be out in the day, asleep at night, doesn't have nocturnal vision or anything like that.
Yeah.
So if you want to touch, what I usually tell people is to go from the top of the back to the bottom of the tail. And then if you go in the opposite direction, you'll realize that you get stuck and it feels kind of like Velcro. It won't hurt you, but you'll see what I mean, that when an animal would try to bite onto him, what they would feel if they went in that direction.
Almost like a rock or, and then like.
And you can go that way, yeah. And you can see that each of these is actually a little scale.
Yeah, you like Velcro.
Yeah, you get kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
Ooh,
It's interesting, right?
yeah.
Listen to his tail, it looks kind of like red.
So he was actually in an art project. So we've recently started a program where our animals do art, and they step in natural paints, and then they walk across canvases at the nature center. So he was an artist the other day. That's what he was looking at. All right, so we'll put him away.
Make sure you got all those roaches away.
Yes, the roaches are gone. Now, I did want to talk about with the bearded dragon, again, a lot of the animals I brought today, it goes back to habitat destruction and how we live our lifestyles and how that could impact an animal like that. So when we're talking about desert environments, the biggest issue that we might have is how a desert environment might be impacted by our actions. The good thing for him is that most of the time humans don't want to be in the desert. So that's a good thing. But it could impact, deserts are actually growing wider. So what that could do for him is that could impact his food sources. It could allow bugs to spread out further than they normally would, making it harder for him to find food, right? So all of these things are things that we like to think through and talk through when we're introducing our animals.
Kind of like the desert, like widening is like due to like climate change or
Due
like
to climate change, exactly, right? Due to human activity that's usually then causing climate change and then causing that reaction to it. All right, so this guy's busy, so I guess we'll let him out. All right, Bandit, it's your time. So this is Bandit, and Bandit is a ferret. And ferrets, again, are not native to this area. So this type of ferret specifically is from Europe, and they are domesticated as pets in the US. Yeah, these are very popular as pets because they are very cute. Now, Bandit here and ferrets that come from Europe like this were actually used as hunting ferrets. So they are carnivores. Even though they're very cute and fluffy, they're actually very vicious hunters. And when they go on hunting trips in Europe, their job is to go into burrows and holes and scare out any kind of animals that might be there. They might catch them themselves, most of the time rabbits. So they have important jobs in Europe, and then that allowed them to be domesticated to have as pets in the US. Now there is a native type of ferret in the US, it's called the black-footed ferret, and it's very similar to this type of ferret, but lives down south. So again, you wouldn't find it up here in New York. Now ferrets are pretty cool. First fun fact about a ferret is that they sleep for most of their life. So this animal is gonna sleep for 20 to 22 hours every day, right? So they're only awake for 3 or 4 hours. When they're awake, they do normal things like we do. They're gonna play with their friends. They're very, very playful, and they're gonna eat, they're gonna hunt. But other than that, they spend most of their life asleep. They do like to live with friends as well. So he has a friend at the nature center that he lives with. And they are very flexible. So if you look, I could actually fold Bandit right in half, right? And that doesn't bother him at all, okay? So the reason for that is they have extra cartilage that goes down their spine, and that helps them to be flexible. And that is because where they hunt. So a ferret is usually hunting for small animals that live below the ground. And that's good for them because when they hunt below the ground, it's very unlikely that a predator will be down there that might want to eat them, right? So it helps give them protection, and then they can hunt freely. Now, when they're in the ground, a lot of the animals that they're searching for have dug burrows that are a lot smaller than his size. So they have to be very flexible in order to quickly move underneath the ground to hunt their prey, but also to be able to turn around in a tight space to be able to come back up. The last thing an animal like this wants to do is come out from underneath the ground with their butt first, right? Because he needs to be able to see, is there a predator out there that might want to get me? And they have to be able to prepare, right? So he's already trying to go to sleep. So that is what allows them to be very, very flexible, mostly for their hunting. Now you can see he's got little tiny ears and he's got the whiskers, and these all help him as well because they will come out in the night. So he will sometimes be hunting at night, and he'll use those whiskers as a sensory tool to help him. He has a decent sense of smell as well. And his eyes, not good. So the ferrets, and I'll put him on the floor so you can kind of see him walk. Very playful, and you'll see if he gets excited, he does like a little hop thing. And I did bring him a little bit of a snack. So these are actually cat treats. Now a ferret, so these are cat treats that they love. And you can see that they're very gentle creatures. So when I say vicious hunter, this is also, again, domesticated animal. You know what? So these are cousins with a skunk. And the reason I tell you that is because when I bring him near you, you're gonna smell a stinky smell. And that is good for him because it protects him, right? A lot of animals are gonna leave him alone because he stinks. Now, the spray that a skunk does is not something he can do. So he cannot spray the stinky smell on us, but he makes the same smell that a skunk makes in order to protect himself. Now, some people will have that gland removed so that they don't smell as bad, but to have him live a comfy, humane life, we leave him with the gland. He's a little bit stinky, doesn't get on us, doesn't bother us. But again, a way for him to protect himself.
And is that like kind of produced like through like, I guess, sweat?
Yeah, so it basically comes out through sweat glands onto the fur, and so it just kind of covers his whole body. It's everywhere. Doesn't go away, unfortunately. So if you want, you can give him a pet. And you can see they're very curious, very friendly.
Well, how many, like, they look like they have a lot of, like, I don't know, fingers or like?
Yeah, so their toes, they have 5. And you can see they even have some webbing between their feet. They're not super prone to going in water, but they do have that, and it probably also helps them with climbing and running. All right, so ferrets, again, same idea, is that we hunt these animals a lot of times for their furs or for meat, for other reasons, right? So, and in the US, we take habitat from them, you know? So a lot of the times where these guys live in the US, you're talking about coal mining areas and things like that, where we remove entire mountains or forests
Especially the South for like oil or...
Exactly, for oil and all those types of things. So all of that can impact these types of animals as well. Cute. All right, I brought us one more grand finale. Okay, so our last animal is a bird. He is going to be on what's called a jest. So a jest is basically like a wrist, like a bracelet for him that attaches to my glove, and so he won't be able to fly away, but it will look like he can. Okay, so this is our final friend of the day. This is Melado, and Melado is a eastern screech owl, and this is the only animal of the day that you can find here. This is a native animal to New York State and a lot of the tri-state area, East Coast. And so Melado here, we have him, and the one thing that I always like to mention is that all the animals we haven't purchased on our own. They've either been given to us in a rescue situation or they're injured beyond release. So Melado here, and with all birds of prey, so birds that hunt and eat meat, you cannot legally have them in New York State if they are releasable, if they're healed and healthy. So Melado we have because he is not releasable. He was brought to us, he was injured. If you take a close-up look at him, you'll see his beak's a little misaligned. He's missing a couple toes, which is hard to see because his feathers are long right now. And he also doesn't have the best sight, because when he was a baby, he fell out of the nest, he landed in a pricker bush, and that basically was the end for him of being a wild animal. But luckily, he has been living his life at the nature center for about 12 years. And Melado here, even though he looks really, really tiny, he is actually full grown. This is actually a large size screech owl because he eats really, really well. So he is not gonna get any bigger than this. And now as a bird of prey, again, he is a hunter. So he's using his talons here, which are those really long nails on his feet, to hunt. When these talons grab onto something, the likeliness of him releasing it is very, very low. So that's kind of the end of that life, right? And then he's gonna eat with his beak. So his beak is still strong enough for him to rip apart food when he needs to. He's not gonna swallow it whole, he's always gonna rip it up. At the nature center, we don't feed them live mice, we feed them dead mice, and the way that we get them to eat it is we actually warm it up. So birds like this are not scavengers, meaning for the most part, they don't want to eat something that's dead, that's been sitting on the road. They want to catch it, kill it, and eat it fresh. So we need to make them feel like they've done that, so we give them kind of a warmed up dead mouse to consume. He'll eat about 3 little tiny pinkies, is what we call them, a day. So the next thing about birds of prey is that, specifically with owls, a lot of people think that they can spin their head in a full circle. Unfortunately, not true. But they can spin their head a lot further than humans. And the reason for that is that their eyeballs don't move in the socket. So if we leave our head straight, we can follow our finger back and forth without moving our head. He couldn't do that, so his eyeballs don't move. So if Melado wants to look over there, he has to turn his whole head. So the reason his neck is so flexible is because the eyeballs don't move in the socket. So he can go about that far. And you can kind of see, like, once my hand goes, he'll try to get me, but that's about as far as he'll go. So no full circle for him. Now he's got a lot of feathers, and right now he's big and fluffy because winter is coming, and he's got these down feathers that are gonna keep him warm. Another misconception is that birds like this would fly south for the winter because they're cold. This bird is never cold, right? The reason that a bird like this would fly south for the winter is because its food is cold and they're following the food, right? So he's perfectly happy staying with us all year round. And these feathers will help keep him warm, and also will help him with camouflage. So he can blend in with the bark of most trees in this area really, really well, which is nice for him.
It kind of looks like he has like snow on.
It looks like he has like a snowy bark. The next thing is that a lot of people will think that so on the top of his head, he's got like a feather there and a feather there. Looks like two little spikes. So a lot of people think those are the ears. It's not the ears, they're kind of just a fancy head dressing for him. He does have ears though. The ears are very cool. He has one ear on the top here and one ear on the bottom. So they're kind of unbalanced. And the reason for that is because it gives him amazing hearing. It allows him to hear up to 100 yards away or more. They can hear when an animal is under snow, when they're under the ground. They have amazing hearing. So again, the ears are not up there. The ears are on the side of the head underneath the feathers, so we cannot see the ears. All right, any questions about Melado here?
I'm like trying to think of it.
No, yeah, of course.
Does like, I guess like, he have, like when he gets warm, like he doesn't like shed, or does he just?
So they can shed. So when he sheds, it's called molting. When a bird sheds their feathers, and he will molt. Sometimes it's just he's ready to get new feathers in, and sometimes it's seasonal. So at the end of the winter, he'll molt because he wants to get rid of those heavy down feathers that he's got for the winter time. So they will do it when he molts. He kind of looks like Albert Einstein or something. Like he just has like missing hair everywhere. We'll go to the bathroom sometimes, but then they all kind of grow back in. All right, Melado.
How, I guess, big is like his wingspan?
The wingspan. So I'm gonna let him fly a little bit. He won't come near you guys, but you can kind of get a sense of it there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's kind of attached. And again, these dresses are something that really just help us to make sure that we don't accidentally release a bird in a building. But they're not painful for him. It's just a small piece of leather that goes around what would be his wrist.
Oh.
Yeah, and you can hear him, he's making a little bit of a hiss noise, and that's a protective way that he defends himself, right? A lot of people don't want to go near an animal that hisses, so he's gonna make a little hissing to try to scare us away.
And does he like the stereotypical like who like sound? Or?
So he doesn't really do the who. The who sound is to very specific animals. So a lot of we have a bird of prey that's another owl. They'll make a noise that's more of like a. He makes a noise that I can't even repeat. But it's not the who that you would expect. And I remember the first time I heard him make it, I was like, wait, that's not what he's supposed to sound like. But you'll find that a lot of birds of prey, especially the way that they're shown to us, which is oftentimes in films or movies, because a lot of people aren't lucky to see birds of prey in the wild. They'll attach a noise to them that's actually not usually what that is. Most commonly, they'll use like a hawk noise for an eagle, or basically for every animal that you will have. So if you want to touch him, so you'll see, I'll just show you an example, is like you want to come around his head because he is still a little bit nervous when he's getting touched. And if I just touch his head, he gets a little nervous at first, but then he'll close his eyes and he usually likes it. And you can see the bite doesn't hurt because his beak is very little. But he usually kind of relaxes. Good boy. So you can touch him, you'll feel he's almost, for me, I think he's about as soft as the chinchilla. So I'll start and then you can just put your finger right below mine.
Very soft.
And we are careful with him as well, because for him, our oils could really impact his feathers. You feel how fluffy they are. So our hands are a little oily just naturally. So we don't usually let larger programs touch him, just because it could scare him a lot, and also because we don't want to mess with his beautiful feathers. All right, so that is all I have for our animals for today. But essentially, what I really want to get across is that we call these our animal ambassadors, and that's because we have these animals because they were not able to be cared for, but we gave them an amazing life at the Nature Center, and then we introduced the public and our communities to these animals so that they can understand how we impact the animals that they love and what we can do to help, right? So all of these animals, the main thing is just really thinking through, like we were talking about, our lifestyle. What do we need and what do we use, and how does that impact the natural world and the animals around us, and how can we do less of it, right? So even a guy like him, The reason he fell out of the tree is very likely because of human interaction, right? A couple of our birds of prey we have because people remove eggs from nests as a baby. When a bird hatches, they're going to think whatever they see is mother, right? So a lot of our birds have imprinted on humans. So they can't be released even though they're perfectly healthy animals, right? So all these things, just wanting to really pay attention and think about our impact on a broader scale.
So I guess like I'm thinking like what's a way we can like I guess prevent like all that like deforestation and like that would I guess depend more on like what we consume. Like we have to be more conscious of like
Yes. So the way I like to explain it is everything is supply and demand, right? So we as humans have demanded, for example, meat consumption. We love burgers, chicken, all these things. But where do these animals have to live to provide us all of that meat? They have to clear the land, they have to graze the land, right? So there's a lot that goes into just giving us a burger, right? A lot of water, a lot of grain, a lot of production, shipping, all of that, right? So really just rethinking how often you have those, I would consider that a luxury, right? Because it has a high impact on the environment, but it's enjoyable. So that doesn't mean never eat the burger, but it means when you're gonna eat the burger, maybe try to buy it from the farmer's market locally instead of from the supermarket, right? So it really comes down to if there's something that you're doing that you realize far, far away could contribute to something that you don't like, trying to replace it with an alternative, right? It doesn't mean you have to go cold turkey on everything just to, because everyone has needs, right? But when we demand it, they're gonna supply it. So it's just figuring out how do we either demand it differently or how do we look for alternatives?
and like sometimes like those like meats or like whatever it's like being sold is like sold at a much like cheaper price and we think it's better.
Yes, exactly. And that's the issue is that really we want things and we want them really cheap, right? Which is nice sometimes, but oftentimes when they are that cheap, you have to think about where they've come from. Because if they're that cheap, they're probably all 500 chickens are in one room and you're getting a chicken that had a pretty rough life, you know? So thinking through all of that, and that oftentimes right now, it's true, unfortunately, things that are better for us and the environment are more expensive. But the more that we demand those things, the lower the price will go, right? So it's kind of getting everyone on board to help us do that. All right, Mr. Melado. All right, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of our animals.